I'd rather create something that others criticise than create nothing and criticise others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 71 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Today, cricket doesn't involve a bat and ball. It's the insect that's creeping in from Eastern cuisines. Skye Blackburn farms them just outside of Sydney and is currently expanding to a much larger site due to their demand. She has a strong position on edible bugs and the future of insect farming as an alternative protein and culinary ingredient. But I won't chirp on. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show, Skye.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you, very well. My first question I like to ask is, what is your crazy hospitality story? So is there something weird, exciting, strange, funny that you've seen in your time in the hospitality industry?
Oh, well, one of the best things that we've done is we did a special event at our Star City casino and they had about 650 people there. We weren't serving any edible insect dishes, but I was actually invited by Kylie Kwong to be backstage in the kitchen. So they had Renee Redzepi and Michael Chan and Kylie Kwong all there serving dishes for these 650 people. And it was just so amazing to be able to experience that. And I was very heavily pregnant at the time as well, so all the chefs kept bringing me food, which was a good bonus. But it was just so amazing to see how they prepared those dishes and how it was like clockwork, that each dish was exactly the same. They were all prepared at exactly the same time and served to the 650 people at exactly the same time. So that was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's like event catering. So we're going to get into your background a little bit later into the episode. That's not something you've been exposed to until that sort of experience, is that right?
Yeah, so we haven't done a lot of huge events like that. Normally, if we're doing an event, it'd be between 100 and 200 people, definitely not 650 people.
Yeah, it's just a whole other scale.
Yeah, definitely.
The next question I like to ask, Skye, is why you do what you do.
I'm actually an entomologist and a food scientist. So an entomologist is a bug scientist, but I've always had a fascination with bugs. And when I went to university, I studied entomology, but there's not really a lot of jobs in entomology in Australia. So I did a degree in food science at the same time because they were requesting food scientists at the time. Shortly afterwards, we went on a trip to Thailand where I saw edible insects and tried edible insects for the very first time. And I just loved them. And when I came home, I wanted to purchase some for myself, which I couldn't do. So I started to breed my own little cricket colony. My food scientist in me kind of wanted to know a little bit about the nutrition, about the insects. So I sent them away for nutritional testing. And when I got the results back, I was actually really, really shocked that Australia and most of the Western world didn't eat insects as a source of food because they were so nutritious. And I felt like accidentally I had the perfect combination of skills to be able to make them more readily available and make them suitable for the Western diet, make them available to more people, and they're just so sustainable as well. So I find it hard to believe that it's not a source of food for the majority of people, and I kind of feel like it's my mission to help people understand why it should be.
That's awesome. The first time I had crickets were at a little restaurant called Chupacabra in Byron. And I was just like, whoa. I just saw it on the menu and I'm like, I'm definitely going to eat that. That's awesome. Which I'm not normally like, which is funny. Yeah, I think it's the future. I honestly think that insect farming is incredibly sustainable. Insects breed at a rapid rate. I remember hearing, I'd love to know some figures around that from you too. But from what I've heard years ago, someone gave me this really crazy metric of like 6,000 insects per person. I don't even know if that's a real thing, but what are the sort of numbers around insects?
So there's lots and lots of numbers, but if we're looking at from a nutritional perspective, so when we're thinking about eating insects, most people think that you're eating like a whole insect, like a whole scorpion or a whole tarantula or a whole cricket, like what you've had. When we're looking at insects as a source of food for the future, we actually look at them more in like nutritional ingredients. So we have things like a cricket powder, or we have a mealworm oil, or we've got a milk made out of crickets. So you don't even know that the crickets are there. It's just increasing the nutritional value. So So if we've got things like a cricket powder, the cricket powder is almost 70% protein. We actually have enzymes that are in our gut that are just there to digest the types of proteins that are in insects. So it means that it's more of a complete type of protein. It'll keep you full for a very long time. They've got heaps of calcium and iron in there, lots of essential micronutrients, so things like zinc and magnesium and manganese, phosphorus, potassium. They've got heaps of B12 vitamins as well, 3 times the amount of omega-3 as salmon, lots of omega-6 as well, and they've got a complete amino acid profile. So they've got plant-based and meat-based amino acids in them. So it's really like a whole food, or as some people will call it, a superfood. But then when you're looking at the sustainability kind of standpoint from them, if you replace just one meat-based meal a week using a meal that has edible insects as your source of protein instead, you save over 100,000 litres of drinking water a year. So that's about 4 swimming pools full of water that you're saving, just one person. And that's because we use fruit and vegetable waste from food production processes to feed the insects. So we're not actually using any additional water during their production. Our farm as well is run completely on renewable energy. So that means that we're not creating any additional kind of greenhouse gases and stuff like that during our production. I mean, insects don't fart, so that means that they create about 1/100th of the amount of carbon dioxide and no methane either when compared to traditional forms of livestock. They're also really, really efficient in their processes as well as they're growing. So they're not like us silly mammals. They don't waste energy maintaining a set body temperature. Their temperature is determined by the environment that's around them. So that means if you've got 10 kilos of feed, you only get about 1 kilo of beef, but you get about 9 kilos of edible insects. So as you can see, like the conversion is a lot better as well. The insects only take 6 weeks to get to a harvestable stage. So it's a really, really fast and really, really efficient process. So when we're looking at the future of food, we are looking at things like laboratory grown meats and more plant-based diets and food made with algae and stuff, which is really, really amazing. But definitely edible insects have their place as part of our future food system as well.
Awesome. There's some great numbers there, and obviously it's making me think that like 6,000 per person is just way too small. It's going to be like trillions for sure. I'd love to know, why hasn't it been something that people have really picked up straight away? Is it a cultural difference? Is there another factor that's stopping people from eating insects?
Well, I think definitely there is that ick factor when it comes to eating insects. As I said before, people don't really know what that involves. When we first started in 2007, if we were doing an event, people wouldn't want to interact with us. It would be like we've got a big force field around us that people cannot enter. So they would walk around. But now I feel like definitely with the last 5 years, we've had a big change in consumer focus when it comes to food. So people are now looking for more nutritious foods. They're looking for more sustainable food and more ethical foods to feed their families, and insects kind of ticks all the boxes. If you think about a couple of years ago, you didn't think twice before you went to the supermarket and got a plastic bag for all your shopping. Now we don't do that, and we don't have straws because everybody is more aware of our environment and wants to do the best for our environment. So when we're looking at the future of food, those are the choices that people are already starting to make. They're already looking at ways that they can improve our food system by making small choices themselves.
Obviously, you're on the forefront of that. You are paving that, particularly in Australia. Are there some other people who you've seen have been doing it well that you're learning from?
Definitely, there's a lot of people worldwide that are looking at insects as a source of food. It's fantastic to see the growth that we're having in that area. If you look at places like Thailand actually has over 20,000 cricket farms that are funded by the Thai government, and that gives local communities their own source of food. So if you go to school in Thailand, you actually get crickets for your lunch, which is something that's really fantastic. So I feel like looking at how countries that eat insects on a regular basis are including them in their diet is kind of one of the key factors to moving forward with eating insects in countries where we don't traditionally eat them.
So you said including them in the diet. What are some ways that you believe we should be using them in our diet that we're not? And I mean, not just from what you've seen overseas, but what do you think is an innovative future opportunity in using insects in food?
Well, we can enrich foods that we eat every day using the edible insects, and that's kind of what we focus on. So, for instance, you can enrich your bread that you would make at home, or a large company that makes bread can enrich their bread using the cricket protein powder. And it's the same as, if you get an iron fortified bread or a vitamins and minerals bread, we can actually do that using the cricket powder instead. We've got a mealworm cooking oil. So instead of cooking with a vegetable oil or an olive oil, you can actually cook with that mealworm oil or make a salad dressing with that. And it's got 3 times the amount of omega-3 as salmon in there. And it's high in omega-6 as well. We can make things like yogurt and ice cream using cricket milk that's really high in protein, but then it's got 4 times the amount of calcium as cow's milk. So we don't really look at asking people to eat foods that they normally wouldn't eat. We're looking at making a better choice about the foods that we already eat. So instead of buying your normal bread, white bread, you can buy a cricket protein bread that's better for you. Instead of buying your regular yogurt, you can buy a cricket yogurt that has more calcium in it and it's higher in protein. So that's kind of the way forward we feel when we're looking at insects as a source of food, is really harnessing the nutritional value but giving it to people in foods that they already eat, so it's not something that's really hard for them to do.
Obviously, you want to make it familiar, but also unique. It's cool because in the Western world, talking about insects as food is something that's just gonna, it already stands out itself. So you're able to do that marketing job for the business by just saying that it's edible insects, which is handy while the industry is a bit younger in the West. So it's definitely a cool benefit for you to have. I'd like to know more about your background with your studies. So tell us a bit about sort of what you've studied and then how it really led you to be passionate about insects specifically.
Ever since I was a little kid, I've always been mad about bugs. So I just feel like they're all so different and they look different. They have different behaviors. So why wouldn't you want to learn more about them? And I feel like a lot of kids, because we do see a lot of kids and we go into a lot of schools to teach them about the future of food. And kids always come up to us and say, I love bugs. I love learning about bugs. This is fantastic. And I feel like as we grow older, we kind of lose that passion for what we love, whether it's bugs or dinosaurs or the fire truck that's going down the road. But I feel like I didn't lose that passion, and I've just continued that into my career because I feel like I can kind of express my love in a way that makes other people love it too.
Yeah, and that's a byproduct of being passionate about it, is that other people will get behind that cause, which is really exciting. What are you doing to teach kids in schools?
So we actually have a program that we've been running since 2007 that's about the future of food. So children all around Australia can connect with us. One of our farm staff will go into their school, or we connect with them using their smart board. So that means that they can try edible insects, they can learn all about them, and they can ask our staff in real time questions. So future food is actually a topic that's studied in school. They learn about that already, but we kind of make it a little bit more interactive so that they get to try edible insects. So now we actually have children that we've taught more than 10 years ago that are coming back to us as adults with their own money and making the choice to purchase insects because they've learnt about it at school when they were in year 5 or in year 6. The first time I had an adult come up to me and say, you actually came to my school when I was in year 5 and I really liked edible insects, so now I'm including that in my diet, I nearly burst into tears because because I was just so happy that it was just kind of the proof that what we were doing was actually working, and helping to educate children was really the way forward when it comes to introducing a new food into the community.
How have you found the best way to educate? Is it one by one? Is it brick by brick, miniature human by miniature human? Is that the way to do it? I mean, education is obviously a huge, huge industry and people are trying to innovate in that space. What have you found the best way is to get the greatest benefit from the effort that you put in?
I feel like when we're looking at community education, speaking to children is actually one of the key things that we do, just because children are like little sponges. So they really absorb every little detail of what you say, especially when it comes to food education. They're really, really open to trying new foods because they haven't learnt how not to like food, if that makes sense. So the younger you get them, kind of the better. But for the wider community, I feel like getting our message on the TV and in the paper and doing big events, like we just came back from doing the Easter show, that really helps people be more at ease when it comes to a new food source. People don't know how to use cricket powder in their cooking. So if they see us cooking with cricket powder and they get to try something, then they go, oh, actually, I can use that at home in this recipe that I already cook, which is how we want people to think of it. We want people to have the foods that they already make for their family at home and just add cricket powder to it to make it a more nutrient-dense product. And I feel like people trying it because they don't know what to expect really helps them overcome that mental barrier that they have. And it's amazing kind of watching people's faces change. So, for instance, at the Easter show, we did some raspberry and chocolate brownies that were made with cricket powder. So as they hand them out, everybody's got a scrunched up face. They're not sure what to expect, even though I've told them it really tastes like a really good brownie, but they're still thinking they're going to get some kind of like buggy flavor to it, which, you know, is buggy flavor. What does that mean? But then as they put it in their mouth and they begin to chew, then their face completely changes and they've got this big smile on their face and they're looking at each other like, I don't know what I was worried about. They're kind of relieved. And then the second bite, they're like, I actually really enjoy this. This is something that I can use. So it's amazing kind of seeing that process that happens in like a split second. It's just amazing seeing all these people's faces change, and you can tell that you've changed their mind. And that's what you need to do. You just need to keep going out and keep changing people's minds.
What about people who are a lot more experienced? So say the chefs out there listening, what are some insects that you find most people struggle with preparing or using in cooking that maybe you've found some ways to use more effectively?
I don't feel like insects are a hard ingredient to cook with at all. So once you've cooked with them a couple of times, you kind of understand the texture and the flavour. So the insects that we breed generally don't have a strong flavour of their own. So things like the crickets and the mealworms. So it means that they're really, really versatile. And chefs have these amazingly creative brains. So once they try something one time, it clicks into gear. And when you go to a chef's restaurant, they want you to have an amazing food experience. And I haven't had a bad dish with edible insects in it that a chef has prepared. They're always so amazing. But one of the more challenging ingredients that we probably would have are, we've got a species of black ant that's called a tyrant ant. So they have a really strong kind of citrusy flavour to them. So it's not like a citrus that you've had before, but you would still say citrus, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit unusual. So it's citrus, but it's not lemon, it's not lime, it's not grapefruit. But sometimes they can overdo it a little bit, use too much of it because they are quite strong. So you just need to kind of pull back a little bit on that particular ingredient. But then we've seen the ants used in sweet dishes or savoury dishes or hidden in dishes or right on the top of the dish as like a seasoning. So it just really depends on your style of cooking and how you want to pair the flavours. But definitely the ants are a really, really good one because they have that really strong, bold flavour. And sometimes people don't even realise that the flavour is coming from ants. They think it's a new kind of herb or a new kind of spice. And then you come out and say, no, actually, those little black things on the top, those are ants. And people are amazed.
That's really cool. What are you learning about or exploring at the moment? Like, what is it that you're researching?
From a food perspective or from like a technology perspective?
But I would love to know both.
So from a food perspective, we're always developing kind of new ingredient products that we can use in the retail space. So at the moment, we've developed like a flexitarian burger, which is like a hamburger, but it's made using cricket protein instead. So that's what we've just finished developing, that kind of product. So that's really exciting for us to see how we're going to be able to use that in the wider market and how consumers will accept that kind of product as well. From a technology perspective, we're actually expanding our edible insect farm at the moment. So we're in the process of implementing technologies that we've been developing over the past 12 years that fully automate the processes of the insect farming. So that means the feeding and the monitoring and the cleaning and the harvesting is all done by robots. That'll allow us to be able to bring the price down so that it's comparable to a steak, really, if you're ordering a steak. So at the moment, it still does work out cheaper cheaper than ordering a steak if you look at like protein. So if you've got about a 200-gram steak, you're getting the same amount of protein in 20 grams of the cricket protein powder, and the 20 grams of cricket protein powder will cost you between $2 and $3. So it does work out a lot cheaper if you're looking at the per protein kind of scale on it, but we want to make it as sustainable as we can, as cheap as we possibly can as well, so that more people will adopt it. It kind of normalizes it as a source of food.
Awesome. And for those who don't know, how big is an insect farm?
So currently we're in a facility that's about 200 square metres, but we're in the process of moving into a new facility that's about 2,500 square metres, which means that we'll be able to produce about 10 tonnes of cricket protein a week in that facility. Yeah.
Obviously a lot bigger.
Yes, it is a lot bigger.
How do you handle competitors in your space? Have you had many people in Australia who've seen what you're doing and then trying to do the same thing?
We do have a few people that have come up in the past 2 or 3 years that are doing edible insects within Australia, which is amazing because we want as many people as we can to help grow the industry and help make it available to more people. And they are kind of early on, so they're still looking at their internal processes and making sure the crickets have everything that they need, or the mealworms have everything that they need and are fed correctly and have really good nutrition, which is a really good place to start, because if you don't have the base of knowing the biology of your insects, then there's no way that you can scale that kind of process. We kind of have a little bit of an advantage because we've been doing this for more than 12 years now. So we have developed automated processes, and we're at the stage where we can scale up our production to meet the large demands that we have. Moving forward into the future, there will be more edible insect farms, and they won't do it exactly the same way as us, but they'll do it a way that's suitable for them, which is fine because you don't have to do everything exactly the same way.
Absolutely. Who have you learned from to do things the way you do them?
Well, because we were a little bit early on, we didn't really have anybody to be able to learn from. So we've kind of taken our own experiences and learnt from our own trial and error when it comes to insect farming as well as the food production. So when I first started my business, I actually worked in pet food production. So I was helping develop pet food for Hill's Pet Nutrition. So if you do like little pouches with science diet, things and stuff like that. So I come from a really big manufacturing background. And then from there, I used to be the technical manager for a company that would make cake and biscuits for Qantas. So that was another large company that was doing large manufacturing. So when I'm thinking of production processes, I'm not thinking of how can I make a little bit of this product. I'm thinking of how can I make 1 million of this product exactly the same way, because that's the scale that I'm used to seeing. Other people are looking at more boutique style insect farming, and they're providing really specialized products and really localized products as well, which is fantastic for our food system because that means that they're giving edible insects to their local communities and their local chefs, which is a fantastic thing to do.
What's your biggest challenge right now?
I think consumer mindset obviously is our biggest challenge. We are slowly changing consumers, but we still do get a few people that are saying, ew, gross, bugs. But when you think about it, like 30 years ago in Australia, sushi was considered a strange food because it was raw fish. And now you can get sushi in any food court. There's probably more than one in the shopping centre. And it's something that we've learnt about and we've accepted. And I feel like Australia has a really strong food culture. A lot of people try and tell me that it's really hard to change people's minds in Australia about food, but I don't find that at all because we are a really multicultural nation and we have foods from everywhere. And I think helping to educate people about how to use insects as a source of food is really the key to moving forward. So I think that's my biggest challenge at the moment, is helping people understand how to use it and why it's important, because in 30 years' time, our children and our grandchildren won't have enough protein to support the population. So we need to start looking at alternative proteins now so that our children and our grandchildren have enough food to eat.
That's awesome. And I can hear that that's come out through your answers over the episode. I just have 2 more questions. One is ultimately, where do you want to be? Where do you want to take things?
Well, for the past 5 years, I've been saying within 5 years, you will see edible insects in Australian supermarkets. And, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. So now we're at within 1 year, you will see edible insects in Australian supermarkets. Hopefully that's where we will be within the next year. It'll be more readily available and you'll be seeing large companies using edible insects in their existing product ranges and bringing new product ranges out because they do realise that they need to shift their focus. They need more sustainable products. So including insects in products for their existing customer base is just a smart step forward for them.
Fantastic. My last question for you, Skye, is who would you like to hear on the show?
Oh, Chef Adam Moore is great. Have you met Chef Adam Moore before?
I've not met Chef Adam Moore.
He's wonderful. Just Google him. He's a fantastic ambassador for all different kinds of foods. Also, Anna Yip from Off the Table. She's amazing. She's actually just brought out a platform that allows people to connect with their source of food. So you actually, like a restaurant or a brand will have all their ingredients and you can actually follow the ingredients back to the source of food and then have a fantastic experience at the farm gate where the food comes from. So that's an amazing kind of process to learn about. So you can go to a truffle farm and dig for your own truffles. You can go to an egg production facility and learn about how eggs are produced on a commercial scale. It helps you connect with your food, I think. So that's fantastic.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show today. It's been amazing having you on as a guest.
Thank you. Have a good day.
The show today was produced by the in-house audio team at Hospopreneurs, led by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan. To learn more, head to hospopreneurs.com.